If ever two were one, then surely we. If ever man were loved by wife, then thee. If ever wife was happy in a man, compare with me, ye woman, if you can. I prize thy love more than whole mines of gold, or all the riches that the east doth hold. My love is such that rivers cannot quench, nor aught but love from thee give recompense. Thy love is such, I can no way repay. The heavens reward thee manifold, I pray. Then while we live in love, let's so persevere, that when we live no more, we may live ever.
Welcome back to Bright Hearth Podcast. We're here in Season 1. We're talking about recovering the lost arts of homemaking and the productive Christian household. I'm Brian Sauvé, here with my wife, Lexy.
Hi.
And our little lady, Winnie. Winnie, can you say hi? Hi. She's eating puffs, so she's pretty content at the moment. She's got her car. You might hear some dad-dads, though. That's her one word, favorite word. My favorite word that she says, too. Anyway, here to frame this first season, as we said last time, we're and really organize each episode, we're walking through the rooms of the house. And we're asking the question in each room, what does it look like to obey Christ, to glorify God, and pursue the Missio Dei, the mission of God, in this room? So we'll be talking about hospitality in the kitchen and dining table, rest and entertainment in the living room, and things along those lines. So some of the rooms of the house will require multiple episodes to cover. We won't be able to cover all of them in one episode. And that includes this room that we're beginning with here in this episode, which is the bedroom. The bedroom. And Lexi just smiled as I said that. Try to keep it PG-13 at the, babe. Okay. So, Lexi, why are we starting here? Why not the front door or some other room that you get to? I mean, you don't walk into the bedroom first, usually.
Correct. Fruitfulness. Being fruitful and multiplying. The dominion mandate, it really starts with the people. That's the whole point of everything we're doing, is loving the people well.
That's right. One of the big themes that you're going to hear us hit over and over and over again is that the household is for the people. Because I think this is one of the things that can happen as you are being intentional about trying to recover productivity and fruitfulness in the household, is that you can start to fall into the ditch of making the household like an efficiency game, where you're saying, people, why are you ruining my productive household? But you're getting it wrong if you think that way. And it's true that the bedroom, really all productivity is going to come out of the intimate relationship of the husband and the wife. The productive, fruitful Christian household is going to come out of the differentness of a husband and wife coming together to make life and fruit and all manner of other things that couldn't happen apart from that union. And I'm not just talking about sex and the sexual relationship, although that really is at the center of it. So we're starting here in the bedroom because the marriage bed, the intimate relationship of the husband and wife, really the relationship of the husband and wife is at the center of the productive Christian household. The household is for the people. The bedroom is where people are made. And if you're listening with your kids, we're really not going to be like super explicit or anything like that. But that we are going to talk frankly about sex and that kind of thing here. We might in the future, we've talked about, this season we're going through the rooms of the house. In the future, we might do a whole season that is really devoted to the sexual relationship of a husband and wife, because I think it's a topic that hasn't gotten enough treatment especially from like Reformed and more theologically, I think, centered Christians. It tends to get a lot like therapy talk. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and we're calling it a lost art for a reason. People aren't having sex anymore.
It's true.
Teenagers aren't.
That's true, yeah. A lot of
adults aren't.
Life patterns are driving out the marriage bed. That's very true. That's very true. They talk about the sex drought that we're in. Yeah. People are having less sex than they ever have.
And there's like a total loss of, I guess you could call it like body literacy in a way, because we don't talk to our moms anymore as young girls. Our grandmas aren't around anymore. They're at work. So we have no idea about our bodies and how to properly enjoy our marriage beds anymore. So yeah, it's a big topic.
Yeah, that's good. It's not good. It's not good that that's true, but that is a good insight is what I mean. So Let's just jump right in here. And the way that it might be helpful to frame this conversation is to look at some of the, essentially the duties of a husband and wife in the bedroom. And it might be like, wow, duties, like that doesn't sound very romantic. But with each of these rooms, what you find is that one of the most important questions you can ask in order to figure out what it would look like to properly use one of God's gifts is really to say, what are my duties with it, right?
Mhm.
Like if you're going to use money properly, you need to start by saying, well, what is it for? What is wealth for? Because if you can't answer that question, then of course you're going to misuse that gift. And sex, of course, is a gift from God. In the beginning, in Genesis 1:26 and 27, he said, let us make man in our image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them. God made Adam from the dust of the earth. He made Eve from the side of Adam. And then he brought them together naked and unashamed. And he said, be fruitful and multiply. So sex was God's idea. Sex is not a result of the fall. Sex is a glorious gift from God. And so maybe let's start with, and this, I didn't actually put this in our outline, but it just came to mind. I think it'd be good for us to start here. What are some of the things that go wrong when we get this gift wrong? When sex goes wrong, what other things go wrong?
I think immediately comes to mind is shame.
Mm,
So there's no more freedom for a wife to be sexually hospitable, if you will.
yeah, that's true.
I mean, there's a lot of, that's a very specific sin that I have in mind, like pornography and stuff. But
Yeah.
I think too, like really for reals, like people trying to get pregnant. If there's like lack of communication for whatever reason, or there's actual sin that's unconfessed, or like bitterness, even a wife withholding. If you're trying to have babies, but you're not having frequent sex, you can't have babies. I ask
Definitely
that.
makes it harder.
I do. I ask people when they say like we're struggling with infertility. Well, how often are you having sex?
Yeah.
And are you enjoying it or not?
Yeah, that's good. In the house particularly, if the husband and wife, if their relationship, and really at the most intimate heart of the marriage relationship is sex, is the marriage
Mhm.
bed.
Yeah.
When that goes wrong, I think it can kind of set the thermostat of the house.
Yeah, that's a really good way. Yes. Not trying to be graphic, but yes. Like you really can tell when a wife, I'm not sure what to say. This is
Just saying, if we have to edit it out later, then
No,
I will.
you can tell when a husband and wife have not been enjoying one another because it overflows into every other area they're not enjoying it either.
Yeah, when there's like hostility at the center of the relationship instead of warmth and openness and love. So yeah, the thermostat of the home is going to be set wrong if this relationship goes wrong. Even just working out of even one individual household, whole nations are destroyed by the misuse of sex. Whole peoples.
Mhm.
I mean, if you look at many of the ills of our own culture, you'll find that, in the way that if you throw a rock into a still lake and the rock hits and then there's these ripples that go out, you can think of the misuse of sex as kind of like there at the middle. And a lot of the ripples that are going out, fatherlessness, we're having massive increases culturally in the last 50 years of children being raised in single mother households without their father present. And then all of the different results from that downstream, criminality, achievement in school, later achievement in work. There are massive, massive implications of fatherlessness. And that's just one little ripple that comes out from the misuse of sex. Our culture absolutely worships sex, and so it misuses sex. It doesn't know what it's for.
Yeah. I always think it's funny how the pagan people on Twitter don't actually they don't think you get much because they think
That's so
you know what I'm
true.
saying? Because
Yeah.
they just think Christians are so prudish that there's no possible way we can enjoy sex because we put boundaries around it, and that's just not possible to enjoy
Oh,
sex.
yeah.
Then
Yeah, they make the error of thinking that, well, the way that you enjoy sex is by removing all of the rules.
yeah, correct.
Yeah, it's like, have you ever tried playing any other game where you just remove? How fun is Monopoly if everybody's allowed to rob the bank?
Yeah.
It's like it just doesn't work. Sex works when it works properly when it's inside of the boundaries, the walls, the good walls that God has put up over cliff edges.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, like, hey, don't go here. Why? Well, because polygamy is really going to ruin your life if you embrace it. And, having a harem, digital harem pornographically is going to ruin your life. Or having unprotected, promiscuous sex with 15 different partners per month is going to ruin your life on Tinder or whatever it is. So, obviously, the misuse of sex is going to be a world-destroying kind of thing. So let's talk about what sex actually is for and what are the duties of a husband and wife when it comes to the sexual relationship. Lexy, what do you think? What comes to mind when you think about the duties of a Christian wife with respect to sex in the marriage bed? And maybe are there any common pitfalls or temptations that she might face in this area?
I think the biggest one that I always think of is wives are going to be frequently tempted for a variety of reasons to deprive their husbands. And we have a lot of legitimate and illegitimate excuses to do so.
Yeah.
My hormones are out of whack. I'm tired.
Yeah.
I had to stay up with the baby last night. There's tons and tons of reasons. I don't feel good about my body because I just had a baby. Like, there's lots of reasons. And so I just think that's a huge sin. It's a sin too, by the way. It's a sin.
What?
It's a sin.
It's a sin?
And we should talk about this though, because someone's going to say it. Like you talk about this on Twitter. You should have sex with your husband, even if you don't want to. It's not rape.
No, and we need to make distinctions here that obviously a husband should not be violently forcing himself on his wife. Of course not.
That's not what we're talking about.
Obvious. Any couple that walked into my office at the church and we started counseling and I was like, what's the problem? And she said, well, he's violently
We've had
forcing.
that.
I'd be like,
we've had that.
You need to repent and we're going to have serious conversation. That's a sin. Like, he's sinning.
Yeah.
But
we're not talking about that.
We're not saying that when we say to a wife, don't deprive your husband. Like, don't, meaning like and there are legitimate things like, let's say you had a baby a week before. Obviously, physically, you are not healthy to have sex when you've just had a baby a week ago. But I mean, Paul says this, 1 Corinthians 7, he says, because of the temptation of sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife. Each woman should have her own husband. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to the husband. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. And this is radical for the day. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. So, verse 5, do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer, but then come together again so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. So that verse tells the husband and the wife, when your spouse is interested sexually and it's an appropriate time, you have sex. That's what you do.
I think too, you've said this before. It's been helpful. I've told a lot of wives this, like, the person who has a higher sex drive sets the pace of the relationship.
Yeah, and sometimes that's, more often that's the husband than the wife, but not always. There's as a pastor, you kind of see it all across the board. And so sometimes it is the wife that has the higher sex drive too. But yeah, that's wise. So one duty, it seems like you pointed out, is that a wife should make it her goal that whenever reasonably possible, if her husband is interested in, and she knows, like, let's be honest, you can tell.
When is he not? When is he not?
Well, sometimes when you're a young man in your 30s, for example. Okay, I'm going to stop before I have to delete all this because the editing will take too long. But I think that's a good point, though, is that sometimes ladies can kind of play, maybe play dumb, like, oh, I can't tell that he's interested.
Yeah.
Maybe I will pretend like I cannot tell.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell?
Oh, yeah. I like you. I can tell.
I like you. The feeling is mutual. We have to remember the context of this conversation regularly while we're having it. Is that other people are actually, we have to remember that though we are in a room by ourselves, other than Winnie, other people are in the room with us at the moment. Did you know that with every episode of Bright Hearth Podcast, Lexy and I record a short patron-exclusive episode on all sorts of practical things from fertility to finances to other lost arts of homemaking? You can gain access to those and also support the show at patreon.com/brighthearth, patreon.com/brighthearth. And actually, there's all sorts of great merchandise. We give away a sweet patriarchy mug, a t-shirt with different tiers of support there, and also an Ask Me Anything sort of style content that we make there. So head over to patreon.com/brighthearth and help us continue to make high quality Christian media that's hopefully helpful to you and your household today. So duties of a wife, obviously that's the most basic, is like, be sexually available to your husband. What else comes to mind?
Just creativity and freedom, I guess, as you lean into, as you're resolving sin issues in your marriage. And, hopefully there aren't a lot of sin issues for everyone, but there are some very major sin issues that we've counseled people through sex-wise. And as the Lord heals you in that way, you should be on a trajectory towards more and more freedom and creativity in your marriage bed within the bounds of Scripture.
Yeah.
Obviously. So, I think for a wife that's, I don't know if this is the right context for some of the really practical advice, but is this okay? Like we have talked about this before. Well, okay, first of all, communicating with your husband, I think that's really helpful. It's been helpful for me that you have taken the lead in communicating about this stuff regularly. It helps to talk about, like, what are your concerns? How are you thinking about sex? How are you thinking about, the plastic surgery industry? We've had some really good conversations because we live in Utah where everybody has plastic surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And so on my mind as a wife walking around with, what do I call them? When you go to the park and it's like the fancy Mormon moms. Who have like 7 kids, but you can never tell. And so in back of my mind, you've walked me through a lot of that. You've helped me think through this from a Christian perspective.
Yeah.
Even just basic conversations about pornography on a regular basis. Yep. So husbands taking the lead in communicating about that on a regular basis, I think is very helpful because as husbands and wives both, we have separate temptations in this area. Mine as a wife are going to be more inward sort of insecurities, I guess. So husbands, if there's a lack of freedom in your marriage, take initiative and start talking about it, maybe.
Yeah, that's really good. When we're talking about the sexual relationship of a husband and wife, if you read Song of Solomon, if you read Proverbs, for example, Proverbs chapter 15, in the first half of the proverb, Solomon instructs his sons in what not to do. Basically, this is bad sex. Don't go down to this woman's house. Don't give in to the whore, to the pornographer, we could say, any kind of adulterous or promiscuous relationship. But then he switches, and right in verse 15, it goes from do not into do thou shalt, like thou shalt not to thou shalt. Drink water from your own cistern. And he's using these images as euphemisms for his wife's body. Or her, like literally for her body in their sexual relationship. Drink water from your own cistern, flowing water from your own well. Should your springs be scattered abroad? No, let them be for yourself alone. Let your fountain be blessed. Rejoice in the wife of your youth, a lovely deer, a graceful doe. Let her breasts fill you at all times with delight. Be intoxicated always in your love. And so the husband is expected to set the tone in delighting in his wife, in telling her against the lies of the culture, like you were mentioning plastic surgery. Like, no, I am delighted that my wife is a fruitful vine.
Yeah.
I'm delighted that my wife does not look the way that she looked when she was 17, because it's a glory. It's a glory that both of us are going to age together, because that says something meaningful about our covenant faithfulness to one another. It says something glorious about the purpose of our marriage, which isn't just sex for the sake of pleasure, though that's there. It's sex for the sake of pleasure and fruitfulness.
Yeah.
So your body's actually preaching. When you undress your wife and she looks like she's 35 and has had some kids, husbands ought to learn to outwardly, verbally delight in the actual body of the wife in front of them.
Yeah. She'll want to get naked with you more. So do that.
She
for
will.
sure.
Like if you just practically, if you know, all men, you can say like, I'm taciturn, I'm quiet, I don't talk that much. Well, you need to learn how to be vocal.
Yeah, you need to talk about this.
And wives, maybe like I think it's helpful for wives to hear this from a woman, the ladies who are listening. It's equally important that a wife be verbal, and for it actually, like for her to, the word that I use a lot from the pulpit when I'm preaching about this, when it comes up in the text, is, for example, when I preach through Proverbs, is that a wife should cultivate the trait of responsiveness, sexual responsiveness.
Yeah.
Can you maybe speak to that a little bit? What does that mean?
Well, you have talked about before the fact that some of what the porn industry gets about the way God created humans is that we're visual and we're verbal with sexuality. And I think the way Christians have kind of introduced shame to that is we don't want to admit that to one another. So we don't play into that at all in the marriage bed. So I think it is something that wives need to start understanding, even how to communicate. What does their husband like to communicate about during sex?
Yeah, your husband.
Just to be blunt.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when we talk about sexual responsiveness, so we're talking about a husband taking the initiative to delight. The command in Proverbs 15 is that he should delight in his wife. See that? Rejoice in the wife of your youth, a lovely dear. And it gets poetic. Like men should have I think when you think about the wisdom of the royal son, which is what Proverbs is about, preparing men for kingship, rule, and godliness and wisdom, is that part of what the man needs to cultivate is the ability to use words well. He needs to be able to think well, read well, speak well, write well, within the bounds of whatever God's given him for his vocation and ability. Part of that is he ought to cultivate the ability to verbally delight and rejoice in his wife. And then in response to his initiative, his wife should cultivate not being like, be shy publicly, fine. Be a walled garden, to use Song of Solomon's terminology. Yes, but then when the garden door is opened for your husband and the lover comes in, we're now in a different kind of place. Like it's even right that Lexi's like uncomfortable a little bit talking about this because this is a public conversation, and that's right for her to have a hesitance to talk about some of this, overtly. But what we're talking about is like an actual cultivation of responsiveness, where most women will need in their marriage sexual relationship most women are not like too responsive and too verbal and, like they need to be reined in, and like, hey, most women, would you agree, the more common temptation is to be
when I've talked to ladies about this, something I've said is like, you need to learn, and I don't know, maybe it's because we're high school sweethearts. Which
we are. We've been, we wanted to marry one another since junior high.
Okay, so I have told women that they need to kind of recover fantasizing about their husband.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that you're like told, hey, you need some discipleship in this area. How much are you thinking about your husband?
Yeah.
Are you texting him when you're thinking about that?
Yeah.
Are you telling him when he walks in the door? I think what happens is as you start to cultivate those sort of habits, then it becomes easier actually in your bedroom.
Yeah.
Because you are allowing yourself in a way to tap into the way God made you sexual. I don't know how else to put it. Like we just, as Christian women, sometimes we just shut that off so much.
Yeah.
And that's unholy.
It reminds me of what happens with the conversation about money sometimes and wealth, where people are so scared of greed and the misuse, because the love of money is the root of all evil. Is at the root of all evil, Paul says.
Yeah.
So it's a dangerous thing. Sex is similar. This is a nuclear grade danger involved in sex. I mean, it can destroy a whole society.
Yeah.
So what can happen, I think, though, is that just like poverty theology can develop around Christians, where they actually begin to think that poverty itself is virtuous, well, I think you can tend to have the attitude where instead of cultivating high walls, where nobody's getting into the sexual relationship, there's no porn, there's no adultery, there's no flirtation with other women or men, there's none of that. Let there not be a hint of sexual immorality, Paul says. Hebrews 13:4 tells us, let the marriage bed be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and the adulterous. But what we can tend to do is then ladies, I think especially, can begin to build walls to keep their husband out
Yeah.
and not let him into the garden.
Yeah.
So cultivating sexual responsiveness is one of the highest duties with respect to the marriage bed that a wife can be thinking about. And part of it just begins with recognizing that most ladies are not wired to think first about. A lot of husbands are like, why isn't my wife being responsive? Why isn't she, seeming to delight in our sexual relationship? What's wrong? And it's like, she's just different from you, right? She's not naturally. She has to actually like intentionally open a door.
Yeah.
And
it's
a
not
skill.
that she can't. It really isn't that she can't. It's just that there's not. I think as you practice it, you do get better at this.
Yes, you need to the marriage night, the wedding night's glorious, but it's not the best night.
Yes. It is a skill set. We used to talk about that a lot, that
Yeah.
it really is a skill set. And so I think too, if you're not communicating, I really do think sex gets better the older that we get. Sorry. As you have more experience, it does just get better. But because we're not talking about this as a skill set, we're only watching Hollywood movies where it seems like they just have amazing sex all the time.
Mm-hmm. Or pornography.
Yeah. Then what happens is you have a young Christian couple that gets married, and it's not like that from day one. So they must think, oh, this is boring. This is the rest of my life. This is boring. And so then both men and women can sin with pornography, different types. It's different for women. But I think people should understand, in order for them to have hope, that this is a skill set that you really can grow in. And can you name some of those resources? I don't remember them, but like some of the Christian websites. I know you've recommended them before, but I don't know what they are off the top of my head.
Off the top of my head. I can't remember.
There's 2 of them, but I don't remember what they are.
Yeah, to me, I think a lot of them would just boil down to, as I think about resources I've read and trying to put it word on the street, super practical for people listening right now. I think the most important practical thing that you could do day one that would completely, over time, revolutionize your marital intimacy is a husband to take a wife a husband to take initiative in leading the conversation.
Yeah.
Opening up and talking like, let's talk about the marriage bed. Let's talk about how sex is going. Let's talk about what could improve. Like, what would I like from you? And husbands have to be brave and just be willing to say like, hey, I would appreciate it. Like, it would really serve me and delight me if you were responsive in this way. And I'm not going to get more explicit than that, because I think you can fill in the
But
blank
you
and figure
should
it
get
out.
explicit
But
with your husband and wife.
Absolutely. The husband should be explicit in saying this is, and not in a demanding way, because this is just simply wisdom. It's not the way into the heart of a woman is not through demand.
And I don't think those conversations should happen as you're laying in bed necessarily.
No.
I think they need to happen in a different sort of a context, so that the wife has time to really think and prepare her heart for that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So it's not like, hey, I need this in 2 minutes.
2 minutes. No, exactly. But you should be cultivating flirtation through the day. Like, text messaging is such a wonderful gift because you can communicate in a non-intrusive, fairly private way.
And it's amazing. To be honest, I talk to ladies about this a lot.
Yeah.
I am shocked at the number of women that I'm like, do you ever text your husband when you're thinking about him? They're like, no. I'm like, what?
He'd be
Do
so
it.
stoked.
Why not?
Yeah, so, and like you can give yourself assignments. A wife could give herself the assignment. Okay, this week, literally, this is what I'm going to do. I am going to send a sexually flirtatious text message to my husband at least once this week.
Yeah.
I'm going to initiate sex at least once this week. I'm going to tell him, like, I'm going to be more verbal in a way that I haven't been before. I'm going to be more creative in a way that I haven't been before. And just give yourself a practical assignment.
Yeah.
And the husband can say, this week, I'm going to make sure that I'm through the day flirting with my wife so that she knows, like, when the kids are in bed, so that the pump is primed, the ember is lit, and you throw the kindling on it, and it's going to catch flame instead of, well, the fireplace is cold, and so it's going to take a while to get the fire started, which is fine. It's fine. And sometimes there's like, the wife can't use that as an excuse to be like, well, he didn't. Pastor Brian said he had to kindle a fire. There was no kindling today. And so the fireplace is cold. I'm going to make it really hard. No, be kindleable.
Yeah.
Like be winnable.
I think something that you've also really helped me think through is just like hormones, how they're not something to be ashamed of.
Right.
And you've helped me acknowledge like this is a very real thing. God made your body this way. It's good for these different reasons. But it just helps me be more aware of like, because I understand there's something physiologically going on, mentally I can press through in a different way. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes total sense. If you're like...
that's different. You guys don't understand that in the same way.
Yeah, we haven't experienced it.
It's literally like...
Men are getting a straight shot of testosterone all the time.
Yeah. And there's some days that women are just like, I at least for me, it's comforting to know like literally in a matter of maybe 48 hours, I'm going to feel entirely different about this.
Yep. Like the menstrual cycle for a woman is like at the heart of her health.
Correct.
It regulates her whole body. It's not just about having babies. It's like a woman's body is basically designed for nurture and life-giving. And so everything about her body orients around that. Creation follows purpose. Or purpose follows creation. Men are made for strength, for vigilance. They're straight shot. They're much more steady. So a husband has to like study his wife. This is one of the duties of a husband is to know his wife. He needs to know, oh, my wife is going to be much more sexually interested around the time of ovulation. And so, man, enjoy.
Yeah.
And
I think too, it's important for women to take their hormone health seriously enough that they're not just like, my hormones imbalanced.
I'm sorry.
I don't really like you that much, but I also am unwilling to be self-controlled when it comes to my diet. I think that's a really big problem. Like, as a husband, I think it's helpful to hear like you have access, whatever resources you need to get this figured out so you can be healthy and energetic and there for me and there for the kids.
Yep.
I think that's really helpful as a wife to hear that your husband is kind of saying, go steward yourself properly. Here's the money. Go do it. Go get the good food you need. Go get the books you need. Go to the doctor. Let's help you get this figured out because it benefits everyone in the long run when that's happening. So
yes. Hi, Winnie.
So what I'm saying is if you're using your hormone health or lack thereof as an excuse, as a woman, make sure you're doing everything you can to be getting that in working order.
My little girl saying, Dad, Dad. I was distracted. No, that's 100% true. One of the duties of a husband, actually, that I intended to hit on, and I'll bring it up here, is that a husband has a duty for providing an environment where sexual love can flourish. Which, I mean, one of the reasons Paul says that a man who doesn't provide for his family has denied the faith is worse than an unbeliever.
Yeah.
It's because a man failing in provision is similar to a woman failing in something like sexual availability. You know, a woman who's creating a cold environment for her husband, she's not sexually responsive. She is a cold, cube of ice in the home all the time, frigid. That's a sin that's in a similar category for a husband failing to provide. Because the husband's failing to give his wife that which she needs to fulfill her duties. So a husband, practically, that means, men, if you want a good sexual environment, and I don't say any of this for wives to use this as a manipulation excuse for husbands. So don't be like, yeah, you didn't make enough money this month for me to be sexually available. That'd be sinful. But a husband needs to be thinking, have I provided such that my wife can buy groceries and she's not stressed out about money all the time? Because that makes sex really hard.
Makes sex hard. Stress is not good on the body. It is not good on the hormones. Cortisol, that's what
Very
stress
bad.
is. That is literally the death hormone.
Sex killer.
Yeah. So
and literal killer.
Yeah. And we've been talking about putting together resources on like more in depth. I'm really passionate about fertility, nutrition, hormone health,
Obviously.
that sort of stuff. So, why are you laughing?
Because we have 5 kids. I said, you're passionate about fertility. Me too. Yeah, I'm passionate about fertility. No, it's true.
No, yeah. So we do want to get more practical at some point with a resource on this.
Yeah. But. When I think about that creating the environment issue further, it's like a husband who, this is really true for a husband and a wife, is that both of them have to work together to create an environment where sexual love can flourish. Mm-hmm. And so if either of them is really is easy to offend, sex goes out the window.
Yes.
Because all of a sudden, one little statement, you're not having sex that night.
No.
If someone's in a huff. If you're easy to offend, like if you won't obey the Proverbs and just like cover offense, and I don't mean never address sin, but I mean like if you just won't, if you insist on being offended easily, you will have a really hard time having a frequent, glorious sexual relationship. I think about Proverbs 3:27 is a verse that usually doesn't show up in the conversation about sex, but I think it's one that ladies should memorize. And it goes like this. Proverbs 3:27, do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it is in your power to do it. So as a wife thinking about your husband, would it be good for him if you were very sexually available and if you were responsive to him?
Well, what's that other proverb about? Let your breasts always satisfy him. Is that Proverbs?
Yeah, that was Proverbs 15,
Okay.
19
Make
or
that
18.
your life first, ladies.
Yeah, he's supposed to let her breasts fill him with delight. So that means he needs to see them, touch them. They need to be available to him. Like, if they're hidden away all the time when he's around, how is he supposed to obey the command? He's just like thinking, well, they're there. They're out there somewhere.
Yeah. And I think part of this is like if women just have such a martyr complex about, I didn't get to shower this week. You're going to feel gross. Then go take a shower.
It's so hard.
Like,
I'm so tired.
And we don't want to admit that we're creatures. God made us. Beauty matters. I'm not saying that you need to go get a whole new wardrobe and drop, $15K to be sexually available to your husband. But there are very little like classic feminine secrets that used to be passed down from grandmas, from moms, from aunts. And we just don't do that anymore for a lot of reasons. But this isn't that hard. It really isn't. It's like brush your hair, take a shower, put on some lipstick, get a cute new t-shirt, and you'll be golden. Yeah. You'll be so cute.
Put on a smile.
Put on a head covering.
One of the things...
Sorry.
In nothing else. No, I'm just kidding. One of the things that usually triggers the feminists when I talk about it online is just these practical instructions that used to be that grandmothers and mothers taught them. Yeah. So I tweeted, one of the first tweets that ever blew up that I had was basically like, ladies, if you want to you underestimate the power that you have in your house often, and this is so true, to set a tone of joy and gladness. Here's what you do. Smile more. Yeah. Be hard to offend. Free. Cultivate sexual responsiveness and creativity. Free. Yeah. Talk respectfully to your husband. Yeah. Like kill the acid tongue, kill the sarcasm, kill the I'm going to cut him down. Compliment him out loud. Honor him out loud.
And I think too, that verse in 1 Peter, I'm trying to pull it up right now, but it basically says that it's submission that adorns us to our husbands. And so I think if you genuinely if you're like postpartum and you guys have a bunch of kids, you have medical bills to pay, and you're not going to the mall for like 10 years because it's too expensive and whorish anyways, just trust that. Like, trust that it's your godly character that's going to adorn you to your husband in these ways.
Yes, absolutely.
But also understand we are creatures. It's not a sin that your husband prefers to see you with makeup and your hair done. It's not bad.
No, it's not a sin. And so I think, let me paint a little bit of a portrait, I guess, of like the husband who is living I almost said his best life now. No, the husband who is pursuing wisdom in guarding and enjoying his marriage bed in the wife. I think the husband is going to look like he's going to be concerned about his appearance. He's going to make sure that he's groomed, that he's managing his weight, that he's working on being strong and inviting the sexual attraction of his wife in the ways that are possible within we're all different. I'm not saying that you all have to look like Tom Cruise, because it's just we're not all Tom Cruise. Some of us are 6s out of 10s, some of us are 9s out of 10s, and God made a world where that's true, and that's totally fine. But if you're a 6, be the, fittest, best, groomed, work it. Yeah. Like work it on that front. A husband, cultivating hard to offend, he needs to be communicating openly to his wife, speaking freely to her, loving her, being gentle with her, being patient with her, not being sarcastic, not treating her the way he would his buddies, like not making, I've had to learn, like, I can't joke certain ways with my wife the way that I would with like my bros at the King's Hall podcast, because she's a weaker vessel. She's fine china kind of thing. And she's not built to enjoy that. right? Men, are you, again, creating an environment with respect to your duties in terms of provision, taking care of your wife, making sure she's getting the care that she needs for her own body,
Yeah.
making sure that she knows that you delight in her, like literally addressing some of these things that she's thinking about, like, because the world is full of women with, wearing leggings and parading their bottoms, and
Yeah.
he needs to be regularly telling her, like,
That's not okay that they do that.
yeah, I have
Yeah.
no interest in that.
Yeah.
My delight is in you. You are beautiful. You are my love.
Because then what it's going to do is it starts to hold the wife accountable when she's slandering her husband in her mind. Enough times of her husband speaking that truth to her, she's going to stop.
Well, he's probably looking
She's
at that,
going to
girl.
stop. And if you are doing that, you need to stop doing that because it
Yes.
is slandering your husband.
Yeah.
It's being uncharitable.
It's being uncharitable because there are godly, self-controlled men in the world.
Yes.
Encourage and respect your
I wanna
husband.
talk about
Honor
this.
him. Yeah, let's talk about this.
Well, like when all those thousands of feminists were sending you pornography a couple of months ago. I don't remember if it was Jordan or Amelia. Someone was like, "How are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm fine, but I've never had so many people sending porn to my husband before. I'm not sure how to think about it." Like I was genuinely okay, but it was just a weird thing to work through. So I got their Angry Creed in the mail literally the day that happened, which it's basically an expose on feminism in American history. But they were talking in there about how the feminists in New York City would literally like chant about the things they're going to take the patriarchy down with. And one of them was eroticism, homosexuality, and lewdness, I think. They would like chant these three things. And so I was thinking as I was processing that week and just praying, like, I want to have a correct response to this. I don't, like, my husband didn't ask for this. You know what I mean?
No.
So
trust me, I did not.
I was thinking about how the feminists failed to take into account the fact that spirit-filled patriarchs do not give in to the temptation of lust.
Yeah.
And that's like a very real reality, is that spirit-filled men can choose to walk by the Spirit and not gratify the desires of the flesh.
That's right.
And so that's what I was thinking of, how encouraging that is, that especially as a post-millennial Christian, like the Lord is building his kingdom with spirit-filled patriarchs. And that's why the feminists are not going to win. And I can laugh at them. I can laugh and feel sorry for them that they have to send these pictures as some form of, I don't know what. You know what I mean, though?
To prove their path. Because we're enjoying our marriage relationship just fine inside the walls of our house. We don't. So they're literally, they send me this stuff and I have no interest in it. I'm just not even it, because I'm full.
It's disgusting.
And it's sinful. And I know how evil it is and how world destroying it is. And so, wives, well, first, husbands, you need to be honorable men and insist on being honorable men by grace and through faith. So that means through confession, repentance, walking in obedience, accountability, cutting off the hand, all of that first. But then wives do need to honor and respect and verbally, out loud, encourage. And here's the thing. You see this in little boys. Men want to be impressive.
Yeah.
Hey, mama, look. Look at me jump. And then the toddler jumps 2 inches in the air, and he expects his mom to be like, you are just the most impressive creature I've ever seen. Your strength is like the strength of a lion, and you have the fitness of a dragon. And I would, you would protect me from hordes of orcs if they came in, 2-year-old. Husbands are still meant like little boys in mature. That's a godly desire, is that women are the glory of man. So she expects and should expect for men to see her and for her husband to look at her and say, behold, you're beautiful, my love. And he should expect for his wife to look at him and say, behold, your strength is glorious. You are a respectable man. Yeah.
There was something else I was going to say about that I forgot. So,
sorry. Oops. Well, so we're talking about one fox that might get into the garden as well, I think, is because I talked about the ideal portrait of a man. Men should avoid playing into creating a bartering economy for sex.
Oh.
So wives obviously don't do this, but if your wife does this, don't give in. If it's like, if you're tempted to be like, if I do the dishes tonight, maybe she'll be sexually interested in me. Don't do that. Don't create that environment. Husband and wife.
Weird.
It's weird. It's common.
I hope you've never done that.
Heck no. It's so gay. When you're like, I'm going to go, well, because you're treating your wife like a prostitute.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the sad thing is women aren't realizing that is
Yeah.
what they're turning themselves into when they do that, or with a shopping spree. Like she'll get what she wants, so I can get what I want.
Oh, yes. And that is just the demonic negative image of the godly design, which would be that each gives themselves to the other
Yeah.
to serve the other.
Yeah.
And so on the other hand, the Christian wife we have the Christian husband should be self-controlled, doing his best to be attracted to his wife, providing for his family, being respectable, killing sexual sin, pursuing his wife, glorying in her, rejoicing in her, being active in pursuit of her, all of that, delighting in her breasts, loving her body at all stages. The wife, on the other hand, should be warm, inviting, respectful, a place of safety, joy. Her husband should get the impression, my wife really wants to be my sole source of sexual satisfaction. She is eager to please me.
Yeah.
That should be his conclusion. And nobody is allowed to sin against the other when the other falls short. Like no one's
Correct.
allowed to say, well, my husband is 30 pounds overweight and he didn't pursue me good this week, and so I'm going to sin at him.
Yeah.
And the husband can't be like, she was snarky to me today, and so, you know what? I'm just going to be really cold. That's the path of hell, right?
Right. It just seems miserable.
It is. And we've all been there we are all sinners. We all have the flesh. We've all had moments where we've done that, where we've been punitive with the other, and we have to repent.
Yeah.
And go and, do restitution, which can be fun in this situation. Can be fun to do restitution when the sin you had was withholding sex. It's like, wow, I need to now give 4 times. All right.
Oh, Brian.
I'm distracted now. I'm having a hard time. Practically, let's talk just finally about some of the ways that the room of the house, literally the bedroom, we're talking about the bedroom and the marriage bed. What are some things about just the physicality of the room that can cultivate or kill sexual freedom?
Okay. I have two or three thoughts.
Yeah.
First of all, I just really I love our room. Our room is simple. I feel like I'm in an Amish bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
I've worked really hard to not make it be the place where laundry gets stashed. That sort of stuff just stresses me out. I know it stresses you out.
Yep. Yep.
So really practical problem solving so that your room isn't like the problem room in the house. So you can actually enjoy being in there and that it's comforting and it's cozy and all of that stuff. Second, don't watch stuff in your bed. Like if you have a habit of just binging on things every single night, like 3-4 episodes a night, every single night as a couple, maybe consider literally just saying like, okay, we're just going to watch this on the couch. We're not going to watch it in our room.
Yeah.
That's
Ultra
the first
couch.
step. Second step is just stop watching so much TV.
Yeah.
Because that's a bad habit. And you're probably not having enough sex if you're watching The Office every single night.
Yeah.
So, that's definitely something we noticed when we got rid of Netflix. Things were already good, to be honest, but they got even better. So maybe consider that. And I think that's really that's hard when you're tired and you just want to go to sleep.
Do something easy.
Yeah, just do something easy. That's what it is. You're doing something easy. Consider cutting down on the television time. Third, be honest about, we've talked about this, and then it was funny because we talked about it and I immediately talked to another wife at church about it. Be honest with your husband. Like if they are staying home, especially when you have a productive household, sometimes mom and dad end up working on things after the kids are in bed. But you have to be honest with one another. If you're tired, you maybe need to come have sex with me first and then work on your project.
Yeah.
Because it is unfair if you're constantly working, and then you're like, hey, I'm done. It's 10:30. Where are you?
Yeah.
Why are you asleep again?
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
But you have to be able to communicate respectfully about that. Yep. So don't talk about it like the night of like, well, you were doing that again.
She's all in a huff.
But it's okay. Like the next day, the wife I was talking to, she simply said to her husband, hey, could we switch these time frames around at night? That would be easier for me. I want to be available for you. But, honestly, we're humans. We need to go to sleep at some time.
Yeah, you have to sleep.
Yeah. So that solves a lot of problems,
Yes, exactly. Like the physicality of the room, your actual habits surrounding the
Bedtime.
day. And
Yeah.
and again, like I think this is so key for both the husband and the wife and equally important for both.
Yeah. In
It
different ways. There's different. Yeah.
you've got to be setting up your day so that it is very normal for you to have sex. Like
Yeah.
flirting through the day. Um Wives, when you're, getting ready for bed and the kids are in bed, putting something on that is obviously inviting. And I'm not just talking about like lingerie. I mean just putting on like
Nice pajamas.
taking some time
Get rid of the holy leggings and band t-shirts. Literally
Yeah.
throw them out.
Yeah,
Husbands, take your wife to the store, get her some cute
get a
pajamas.
nice cute sleep dress that's attractive to your husband
Yeah.
and is accessible to him, just literally accessible. And I will leave it there, for people that are maybe there are children in the room. But you have to actually think about this. Sex is
Yeah.
a skill. Sex is
Mhm.
something that you'll have to work towards in many ways. It's
We,
not easy.
in our culture today, it's like, it's already not acceptable to look feminine during
Yeah.
daylight hours, but there's like something that happens at 7, 8 o'clock when you take a shower. It's okay to like literally look at your worst forever. And that is not like,
Wet hair and a big like
yeah,
mop on the top
literally,
of your head. And
like there were boudoirs for a reason. We understood that silks and lace was becoming to a woman for a
Yeah.
reason. These were things that her mother and her grandma gifted to her on her wedding night for a reason.
yes.
So maybe, and I know it's hard, like when you're having babies back to back and you're nursing,
Yes.
I understand that that's hard. But in some ways, that literally, it was when I was pregnant, at the very end of my pregnancy with my fourth, I trashed all of my pajamas
Yeah.
and bought all new pajama sets.
And it wasn't like $1,000.
No, it wasn't. No.
But yeah, I mean, and it was, she had my total permission. Trust
Because
me, to
I
invest
knew
in that.
I'm coming to my fourth postpartum.
Yeah.
I want to be feminine. I want to feel good about myself. I want to feel energetic. I feel gross when I'm walking
Yeah.
around in leggings and trying to get my work done. But
Yeah.
you can present yourself a little bit more,
One thing I forgot that we do need to talk about in this episode is when we're talking about sex, we're talking about something that is and really at the center of the home. What makes a home productive and fruitful is the differentness of a husband and wife coming together in order to create beauty and glory in life. Like, and I'll give you some examples. Like for a house to be fruitful and productive, the woman needs to be soft and the man needs to be hard. And I mean that this is literal. That's literally true about sex. But it is true think about the protection and provision of a home. If a man is not a hard man, like where he can't go farm or he can't go work hard and put in the time and hustle and bring home provision, he can't go hunt, he can't go farm, he's soft. Well, that won't work. If he comes home, and wives have to be tough and they need to be strong. Her arms are clothed in strength in Proverbs 31. But she has to be soft too. She has to be feminine, warm, inviting, responsive, receptive. She has to be, she's a place of safety and nurturing in the home for children and for husband, forever. Like she's kind of like this warm center of the home. And so when we're talking about differentness in sex, it's so important, I think, for the husband and the wife to each be aware of the differentness, study the differentness, and understand how to please this person who's alien to me, who is different from me, right? Because husbands, a lot of time, they get frustrated because they're like, why doesn't my wife just get this? Why doesn't she just understand that this is what I want? She is literally a different creature from me. She doesn't understand. Wives, same thing. They're like, I don't understand what my husband wants. So let me give an example on each side, and then I want your thoughts on that too, babe. But for a husband, he needs to understand that his wife is, that she is usually slower than he is in terms of responsiveness, where he's like, most men can, especially men in the prime of their life, can go from completely not thinking about sex at all to 100% like, I would like to have sex with my wife right now in the space of about, I'm going to say a second, like 1 second, one thing. And it can be stuff that she literally isn't even aware of. Like the way that she bent over to get the pan from under the oven. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh my goodness, she's wearing that dress. I know what's under there. I know the treasures in this treasure chest, and I know how to get into the treasure chest too. all of a sudden he has to know. His wife has no idea this whole exchange just happened in his body, that he was immediately transformed and is now like going for it. Even if it's like 4 p.m. and he knows like he's going to have to wait a little bit, but he's going to need to know that. Right. On the other hand, I think one thing that like think about what the average wife needs to know about her husband is that when she thinks about pleasing him sexually, she might just think about pleasing him sexually, but she needs to understand that what pleases him is conquering and winning and impressing.
Yeah.
And so he wants to give her pleasure and actually know that he has given her pleasure to win. And that is way more important to him than just his own than just nerve endings for a man. So a lot of the times wives don't understand that a husband is actually intended to focus on his wife and winning his wife. The wife needs to focus on being one. And so she might need to be in tune with her own body and be in tune with experiencing pleasure and vocalizing it and letting him know that she's enjoying him and that he's impressive to her. Does that make sense? Are you following?
Yeah,
like,
no,
the
that does
differentness
make sense. Yeah. I think him telling her that she has permission to take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
It makes it okay instead of like,
Communication.
that's never mind. Yeah. Okay.
No, it's so important though. It's true that he has to take the lead in this. Like even if you're listening to this conversation, you notice I'm taking the lead in this conversation. I'm not telling my wife, "Hey, let's talk about, lead us in this conversation about sex." I'm leading this conversation so that I'm giving her shelter and protection so she knows like there's safety. She has to feel like I'm being a man.
Yeah.
Even for this kind of thing. So
well, and I think too, him telling her like it's not a turnoff that it takes longer. I want you to like this. That helps her not feel bad about it too.
Yeah.
Again, so it has to be that open communication.
Yeah, exactly. He has to be telling her, like, this is why a lot of men have this fantasy, I think, or this desire where they're like, why doesn't my wife initiate more? And she should, like, think about initiating and flirting with him and things like that. But there's genuinely a glory and there's a sexed reality here, and I mean that like maleness and femaleness, where the husband is supposed to conquer, like he's supposed to win and pursue. She's supposed to be won, right? And it's so funny. I know some people are probably going to listen to this and turn that into some rapey thing or turn that into some disgusting, sinful thing. But this is just a reality. The husband, the man was designed to kill the dragon, get the girl.
Yeah.
And she was designed to be one, right?
Yeah. And I think too, when you're walking in obedience as a wife, you might not feel like it. But if you're obeying and you're praying in the moment, that God can bless that obedience.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen a lot, No, and I'm not just talking about for myself, but I mean, there are lots of,
absolutely.
I counsel a lot of women because women don't talk about this anymore.
They don't have mothers and
I have total strangers that are like, hey, will you talk to me about my sex life? I'm like, well, no one else is going to, so sure.
You might even wonder, like, why are we doing a podcast like this where we're talking
It's because we get this a lot.
Yes.
A lot.
And every time I've preached on this or taught in a very frank manner, and I agree that there's a way that it's possible to like pornify the pulpit and make it too explicit.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. But I think a context like a podcast here where you can listen privately and you can control who's listening. But the reason we're addressing it this frankly is because it has, when Paul says you have not many fathers, like we have a culture where we have not many fathers and many mothers who are actually shepherding and teaching their children. And within the church, like, here's how this works. And sexed piety is so dysfunctional in our world.
Yeah.
Where we have hard women who are bitter and cold.
Correct.
And we have soft men who are effeminate and gay.
Yeah.
And nobody knows how to be just a normal, non-machismo, but normal, hard, strong man. And very few women know how to be soft, receptive, feminine, and strong in the right ways.
Yeah.
Women. And so what we need to do is recover a lot of this. My hope would be that in a few generations within our circles, this wouldn't be as necessary.
Yeah.
Because it would be, people would understand.
Yeah.
So summing it up, I would say, and I'm going to ask you if you have any last thoughts in a minute, if you want to prepare your thoughts here. But for the husband, you need to be thinking about provision, creating an environment of where sexual love can flourish, delighting in your wife, rejoicing in her, studying her, knowing her, pursuing her, flirting with her through the day, learning what gets her going, understanding her differentness from you and actually glorying in that, and then pursuing her, leading the conversation about it. Wives, pursuing soft, warm responsiveness to your husband, cultivating a sexual, your sexual self towards your husband, flirting with your husband, understanding that he's visual, verbal. He wants to hear. He wants to know. He wants to know that he is pleasing you, to be winnable, and to be harder to offend, available, all of that.
Yeah.
Do you have any last thoughts?
Yeah, I just think like if you're really struggling with areas to find that you're impressed by your husband, just go read Song of Solomon and start thinking in terms of like those literal biblical compliments that she's giving him.
Yeah.
Or just start giving yourself language to hang on to if this does not come natural to you. And the last thing I would say is we almost, because we are in a culture that is like anti-men being men, anti-women being women, we need to really question our notions of, I think there's a lot of women that are like, oh, I'm naturally super girly. Well, girly is different from biblical femininity. And our culture, we allow our culture to kind of fill that definition bucket a lot more than we should. So I think we really do need to lean into what has historically Christianity looked at femininity as and masculinity as, and be willing to question what we're inheriting from the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening to this episode of Bright Hearth Podcast, where we are in this season aiming to recover the lost arts of homemaking and the productive Christian household, walking through the rooms of the house and looking at what it would look like to obey Christ in each of them. Just talked about sex in the marriage bed. Next episode, we'll be continuing to talk about the bedroom, but turning more to some practical issues surrounding childbirth and even end-of-life care in the Christian household. So thanks for listening in. We hope that the Lord blesses you wherever you are and that you walk in faith today. You're altogether beautiful, my love. There is no flaw in you. Come with me from Lebanon, my bride. Come with me from Lebanon.
Let my beloved come to his garden and eat its choicest fruits.